Welcome back to Through the Big Book with Dr. Ben. My name is Ben and I'm an alcoholic. So we are in the fourth step. We are through with the toughest part, in my humble opinion. I really don't like that causes part, and you probably didn't either. But you know what? If you're on this video, that means that one, either you're just skipping ahead to see what's going on, but two, and hopefully the more likely thing is you're done with your causes, your names and your causes column. So what's next here? It says, in most cases, it was found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relationships, including sex, were hurt or threatened. So we were sore. We were burned up. That's a pretty dated way of saying, yeah. So then it says, on our grudge list, we set opposite each name our injuries. Was it our self-esteem, our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations which had been interfered with? So we'll spend the whole video unpacking on just that right there. So they give a little example here, and this is kind of what it's going to look like before I go back and define all this stuff, right? So rather than just being completely horizontal like they're doing here in the big book, I put the name at the top left of the page, and then gives more room for me to write and for you to write just a little more space, which is nice. So that's the only reason I changed that part of it. But just to read down here, it says, I'm resentful of Mr. Brown. Why? The cause. It says, his attention to my wife. He told my wife of my mistress, and Brown may get my job at the office. And so this is how far we've gotten so far. And today what we'll be doing is doing the affects my column, which says here, it says sex relations, self-esteem, rooted in fear. Well, that's another video. It says, told my wife or my mistress, this affects my sex relations, my self-esteem, and my security and my self-esteem are both affected from the other two. And so you can see as you go down here about Mr. Jones, my employer, my wife. We don't have to read all those because it's the exact same thing. But it's just they're showing you a format of how they do it. And it says we're usually as definite as this example. So it's basically the way that they do their fourth step. And remember, we're going for precision here, which means doing the same thing over and over. So they're showing us precisely how they are covered. So this is precisely how we're doing the fourth step, right? Okay. So what do all these words mean before we draw all this stuff out? So it's talking about self-esteem. What does self-esteem mean? Self-esteem is how we value and perceive ourselves. So if I call you a red truck and you're like, well, what? What are you talking about, Ben? I'm not a red truck. Obviously, I laugh it off or whatever, who cares? And let's say I call you a loser, or I call you a cheater, or a thief, or drunk, or stupid, or something like that affects you, that pisses you off, that burns you up. What is affected there? That's your self-esteem. Why is that? What's the difference here? Why is it that I can call you a red truck and you don't get upset, but I call you a loser and you lose your mind? Why is that? Well, it's because our self-esteem is hurt. Because I think that deep inside that I'm a loser, or I think I'm a drunk, or I think that whatever it is. I don't think I'm a red truck. So whenever you call me a red truck, who cares? I'm obviously not one. But if I think that I'm a loser and you call me one, it hurts. It hurts my self-esteem, you see. So that's what caused me to blow up, because I think so lowly of myself. You're just calling out what I already believe about myself in the first place. And that's what we're getting mad about there. Isn't that wild? So next, pride. So we see on the bottom of page 65 where it talks about my wife misunderstands and nags, likes Brown, wants to put the house in her name. This affects my pride, personal relationships. So that's where I'm pulling the pride from. even though it doesn't say it in the paragraph. And I think that one's really important to pull out. And obviously, there's a whole lot of other character defects that you can pull from rather than just the 6 that I've described here. I'm just simply doing my best to take you through the big book. But there's all kinds of other things you can add on to this, right? But back to pride. So there's several different types of pride, 2 mainly that the National Institute of Health, or NIH, talks about. And so I like them. They're basically just like the hub of science, right? So I'm going to just briefly talk about the 2 different types of pride. One is called hubristic. That's hubristic, hubristic. And that is the pride that we're trying to avoid here. What does that mean? That means excessively proud or self-confident. So that's when I have unrealistic extrinsic ambitions, which is like I can jump over, the Sears Tower or something. I don't call it that anymore, but you guys from the OG Chicago know what I'm talking about. Reacting unrealistically to small successes, like, you can fill in your imagination there. Reacting unrealistically to small successes. You're like, what's up? Drop the mic, because you got a question right or you did something right. You just blow up with awesomeness. Then it says, and displaying anger and negative affect in the context of failures. So that's like whenever you get upset, you fall short, and you just start throwing stuff. You get so mad, because you just have, you think it's just all on you. It's just all up to you. That's called hubristic pride, and that is pathologic. So that is the pride we're talking about. The other one is called authentic pride, and that is where it's like you accomplish something and you have a sense of inner pride. It's a healthy thing. Like if I, accomplish a degree or something, I'm proud of myself for accomplishing that. It's a realistic thing. Obviously, a lot went into it. My family helped me out. I've had God's help without Alcoholics Anonymous and stuff. I don't just like start swinging from the chandeliers because I accomplished something. But I am proud that I did the work. Same thing with my medical education and all this other things that I've accomplished. I'm very proud of it, but I try not to, I was going to say make it my identity, but that's a whole nother topic for another day. So, security. So what are we talking about here? Security is the quality or state of being secure, like freedom from danger, freedom from fear and anxiety, freedom from the prospect of like losing your job, that sort of thing. What else do we have here? Pocketbooks, that's just your finances. Like maybe you used to sell things or something, and somebody owes you money and they didn't pay you. That affects your pocketbook, or whatever. Somebody owes you finances. And ambitions, that's like the desire to do or achieve something or be somewhere, and to achieve. And so if somebody, let's say, takes your your job, or in my case, I had whenever I was leaving my first medical school, I was withdrawing because I had a panic attack during an exam, and the lady who was listening to me was pretty ruthless and said I should have done this, I should have done that, and raised my hand and gotten out of the exam and all this stuff. But I didn't know what to do because it was my first panic attack I'd ever had. I'd been on stimulants, excessive stimulants, and all this stuff, and I was abusing alcohol, and my mind was just breaking, and so she wouldn't let me redo anything or anything like that. I basically just had to take a WF because I was going to fail the semester from failing that test. And so I withdrew and failed. And I was really mad at her about that, for not hearing me out and not having, from my perception, any kind of leniency or understanding of mental health. And so that stuck with me for a while because I wanted to finish in a certain time period, and I wanted to be in a certain place where several of my friends wound up. doing their rotations and matching and all that stuff to their desired specialties. And I was really upset about that, seeing them, move forward, and I held her accountable for that. And so that hurt my ambition, if that helps you out at all. Personal relationships, that's pretty straightforward. Sex relationships, I don't think that you guys need any unpacking on that there. And so let me double check here. So that takes us through all the content that we're going to be picking from, the 6 things that we have to choose from. For starters, self-esteem, pocketbooks, ambitions, personal, sex relationships, pride. That's what we're looking at. So whenever you're going through this list, you just write to the side. I'm going to post a picture here. You just write to the side of each cause. Like here on my first one, it says, Mom, the causes made me eat broccoli. Maybe that affects my ambitions or my, I don't know. This is a very made up one. So, but you see what I'm saying? The eats broccoli. What is that going to affect of mine right next to that? So let's go to a more realistic one. High expectations. What's that going to affect of mine? So I go through those 6 things. Number 1, does it affect my self-esteem? Does it affect how I feel about myself? Yeah, obviously. Because I feel like in order to be enough, I'm going to have to be able to perform a certain amount to meet my mom's expectations, to be enough. And if I don't meet them, it's going to hurt my self-esteem if that's where, if I have this kind of external locus of control or external goals that are dictating my drive that are really hard to meet, that's going to affect my self-esteem. Our pocketbooks, no. Our ambitions, maybe she wants me to, become a doctor or something like that, but I want to be, a musician or an accountant, something like that. Then yeah, it's going to affect my ambitions. My personal relationships, it's going to cause some strain with my mom. It might cause some strain with other family members as well, because she tells them about how great I'm doing in this or that, and they're all expecting me to become a doctor or whatever. And this is hypothetical. And then sex, that's not going to be in there. And pride. Let me think. Hubristic pride would probably not be involved in this one. So does that make sense? So that's how we kind of go through these. And then we go on through the list, on down the list of the causes, and just apply those 6. Turn the page, go to the next person, repeat ad nauseum. And so, like I told you to just write, to draw a line down that left side, causes on the left, and then here on the right, we have what was affected of ours. And so that's it. That's going to fill up the whole left side of the page. And then you just repeat, turn and repeat. There's nothing different here, And so that's where we'll stop here. That's going to take you some time. I generally like to give people 2 days to do this part. I can't remember if I've already mentioned this or not, but I really like to have deadlines in the 4-step. So for the names column, the people, principles, and institutions, I'll generally like to do 3 days for that, 3 days for the causes. And here's the thing, most people do not finish the causes in 3 days. But if you don't set a deadline, people will take their sweet time and they'll sit on it. And sitting on a 4-step is not a great thing to do because you've churned up all this crap into your mind and into the air. You pulled out all these, skeletons from the closet, and it's just not a fun place to hang out, So setting these deadlines really helps people to, it gives them a way a measurable thing to hold themselves accountable to. And whenever they don't meet them, which is commonly the case, especially with the causes part, then we give them some more, I give them some more time. Well, how about let's add 5 days onto this. Does that sound good? And they're like, yeah, that would help so much. So because if they've been working those 3 days, they've gotten a lot of stuff done, and they've gotten the bulk of the hard part done. And if you're doing this with me now, you'll see in the first 3 days, you'll get most of it done. And those extra 5 days are kind of like it generally seem to be kind of like a breathing process where it gives people kind of just some time to re-normalize after hanging out and all that. They don't want to just trudge right on to the next thing because they think that this is going to be how the fourth step is. But it's not. This is very temporary. So, so on the effects mind, this is an easy cheesy thing. This is very algorithmic, you just pick one of the 6 things and move on. If you want to add on some more things, you want to add on all kinds of different things as far as how it affects you and all that, you want to get ultra deep and have all these different fancy words, that's fine. I don't care. Nobody cares. That's great. But again, the deadlines are important, so try to push yourself through this and meet your deadlines. And if you need more time, some more wiggle room, that's okay as well. The main thing is that, number 1, you get started. That's obviously the hardest part of it, is getting started. But number 2, just that you keep momentum. It's not practical that you're just going to sit down and just fire out all your causes in one sitting. It's just, unless you're 10 years old or something. If you're in your late 30s or 50s or something, you've met a lot of people and you've probably got a lot of emotional and resentment baggage that you're going to want to dump here. So it's going to take some time. And on the effects mind, again, just knock it out. 2 days, knock it out. 1 day if you can, because the next part is where it really starts to unfold. And so if you've gotten quite a few resentments down, quite a few names down, and quite a few causes, and you've been diligent and searched deeply within yourself and honestly within yourself, you're going to be generating a lot of data or a lot of information. You're going to be churning up a lot of information. And so you're going to see a lot of patterns that will start to emerge on your effects my. Maybe you have 55 data points generated, or you've written down self-esteem 55 times. And maybe the next thing is security, let's just say, and that's 26. Well, that's a pretty big discrepancy. That's telling me right now that you've got super low self-esteem. And that is a very common thing to come across in here is an unawareness of how radically low our self-esteem is. I fit completely into that camp. That was my biggest thing, was low self-esteem. I just thought so poorly of myself. No wonder it was so easy to offend me, But then, so whenever we start working on that, working on our self-esteem through esteemable actions, through prayer work, etc., and having integrity through the 5th step, that starts to improve. And then, it's just huge spiritual and emotional gains from just that one thing, because it's a huge problem, right? And prior to this 4th step, you probably weren't aware of it. And so that's a good place to start. And if you've gotten this far, you're probably already starting to, it's probably opening your eyes to see, just what's going on inside of you, But the next part is where it really gets neat. This is where we find out some more of the big nuggets of truth. Okay, and also one last thing before we close out is I shorthand all of these things because I hand wrote them. So on self-esteem, I would do SE. On pride, I would do PR, pocketbooks, PO, or PB, whatever you want, personal relationships. You see what I'm saying? So that way you don't have to write out every single little letter. And that way you can save yourself a lot of time and expedite it. So I'm really glad that you made it this far. We're chipping away at it, so I will see you soon in the next episode.